come back to us in time to contribute their part, but right now they're both starting at least at the precinct meetings, but they'll be here later. And the other thing on the agenda is the Woods Hole Group is coming in at 8:30 to talk about what they are going to do and to hear from us. So we like that. And so we'll be jogging a little bit around on this agenda to accommodate those two factors tonight. First item was a report on the Cape Cod Commission's extended hearing October 29th, if it was held. Apparently it wasn't held.
I got a note saying that. It wasn't held.
And I gather they're, hi.
Hi.
With whole group?
Yeah, I guess John and Heidi aren't here yet.
Well,
That's quite all right.
8:30 is what we told them.
That's okay, your candy's on the chair over there.
Let's tell the stories. Tootsie Coffee.
You're gonna take
I'm not
both?
sure if it's, where should I
No, you can just, right there for now, and 8:30 you'll be on. Anyway, the hearing was not held and it was not rescheduled. They've apparently decided they've taken enough public input for their purposes, and they've advised anyone else who wants to comment on the proposal to send the comments to Boston.
Okay.
Item 2, a plan for a town meeting report of committee and fertilizer bylaw. It's a custom at town meeting, which the members know, that at the beginning of the meeting they hear reports from committees. And we haven't done one in the past because we haven't existed in the past, but we do now. So we'll have one. I've been talking to Sia about this. It'll be an abbreviated version of the CWNP piece, just telling briefly what we've done in the last year and where we think this is going. I hope, whether you're a town meeting member or not, I hope you'll be there, because I'd like to make sure that the public knows who you are. For those who haven't been watching our nationwide television broadcasts.
What's the date?
What are the exact dates?
Tuesday and Tuesday and maybe Wednesday, the 13th and 14th. But this presentation will be the 13th.
Yes.
And they start at what time?
Reports, they start at 7.
Seven.
At 7.
Right, okay.
But this is reports from committees. First, they're going to go through the warrant and do a blanket vote and everything. So it's probably more like 8 o'clock that it'll happen.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
like the third article.
so we want to be there anyway when the time comes.
And this is at Lawrence School, or?
Yeah.
At the Lawrence School, right, auditorium.
It's November Tuesday and Wednesday, November 13th and 14th.
Right.
Town meeting are.
The other piece that is mentioned here is the fertilizer bylaw piece. We could probably hold that for Sia if she's coming later.
Yeah.
Let's hold that. Okay. Now, is the Woods Hole group here? Are you the group? Two people make a group?
We have a third.
Oh.
Should we wait for the third?
Oh.
She should be here momentarily. Heidi Clark is on the way.
Okay, we can wait. Report on status of RFPs. Start with yours. How's Oyster Pond?
I'm still waiting to see the final one. Everything's agreed on except the title, and just relatively trivial. And Jerry keeps saying he'll send it out. I just told you all I know. I could make up some more, but that's all I know.
Well, to be fair, you've been very diligent about working on the details of this with Jerry. At least I've seen a flurry of emails back and forth for a while now.
Question.
Question?
To your knowledge, has the notice been sent to the central register? That would be the key piece.
I've not been notified that it has.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So
The other
at
RFP?
this point here, that timetable looks like it's a 2013 award.
Yeah, that won't be possible to do the process with Thanksgiving and Christmas rolled in.
exactly.
I think he has every intention of doing it in November. The initial, I've forgotten the exact list of stages, but what that turns out to be close to the first of the year. Exactly which side of it, I couldn't say.
Mhm.
Fair enough. Okay. Any other comments or questions about the Oyster Pond RFP? We have other RFPs.
It's eco toilet in combination with staff support for the
Okay.
committee.
Mhm.
Report on it.
Summarizing that? Okay.
Mhm, please.
Wynn and I have worked very closely together on redrafting the portion of the request for proposals, RFP, that deals with support to the eco toilet project, particularly recruiting at least 15, if not up to 62 people to take part in that demonstration. Right now, SIA is handling a lot of those details, and her funding will probably continue through until the end of January. But following that, we do need we need to re-advertise and go through a hiring process. Eric and I met with the town manager yesterday, and he has approved that re-advertising. And we need to develop the document that incorporates both support. I'm going to I use the word staff support, but it's obviously contractual support for the eco toilet project, and then also for all the other things that up to date SIA has been helping us with. The fertilizer bylaw would be a good example. So we need to develop the tasks for that piece looking forward. In this next year, we need to be working on the documentation for a flow neutral bylaw, which makes us eligible for a 0% loan. Without that, we would then have a 2% loan. This is for any of the funding of the large projects going forward. We need to work on what betterment would look like for projects on any of the peninsulas. And then we will need to develop the information that is required by the state revolving fund. Its application is that in itself requires supporting documentation. So there is a need for contractual support. In addition, we have all of these contracts that we have awarded, and the aquaculture will be one of the ones we'll hear tonight. And that, in terms of project management, needs some staff. So that's the task that Wynn and I will be working on, is developing the scope of work for the re-advertising to hire a firm.
And that will include, I believe, some support for the eco toilet project going forward for publicity and things of that sort.
That's right. That's correct. The scope will be, it will be specific, but let's say it will be broad.
Yes.
The firm will have to do several things.
Any other comments or questions on that one? Okay, I can report on the PRBs. The RFP went out. 5 firms responded. It was narrowed down to 3 who were interviewed, and 1 was recommended to the town manager to be forwarded to the selectmen, and when they act on it, that will be made public as to which one that was, but they haven't acted on it yet, so we're obliged not to do that. I think we got 5 respectable responses and 3 very good ones, and as we look, you learn a lot from these responses, because they all sort of give their own spin on what they think the worldview of these things are. And the more we learn about it, the more we realize no one's done this before. You know, they've done PRBs to deal with other issues, like toxic chemicals going through the soil and such. No one's ever done it in a seriously large way to deal with nitrogen from septic tanks. So we'll be the first to...
I thought at the webinar,
Well,
there's...
a 60-foot trench doesn't qualify as...
Okay, so you're talking about something much larger.
Larger scale.
Larger scale.
Okay.
No one's ever done it beyond that scale.
Right, okay.
This experiment that we heard about in Rhode Island that everybody was referencing turned out to be a big nothing.
Oh.
It was a 3-foot ditch, you know, really, it was very
Shallow, huh?
minimal.
Mhm.
And was immediately discarded by the town that asked for it.
Oh,
So they really, this is new ground to actually go through the process that Falmouth is going through on this.
great.
Mr. Chairman,
Steve?
does this whole committee get to see the losing bids? Not necessarily the dollar amount, but the ideas.
I don't know what the rules are on that.
I think we'll have to ask the Department of Public Works
Right.
whether, once the award is made, are the other proposals public documents? That's the question.
I suggest that's Heather. Somebody's
Heather,
procurement
He-
officer,
okay.
DPW with that.
Okay,
Either Julian or Heather, who has the town's procurement officers, would have the rules there.
okay,
It would be educational.
yeah,
It would, if
Right.
it were
If it's legal.
permissible.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we need to remember for the home audience that we have to say what a PRB is, and it's
Right.
a permeable, it's a permeable reactive barrier, and it's a trench that is definitely more than 3 feet deep. And it usually contains, in this case, wood chips, which seems very simple, but it needs to intercept the groundwater and has to be deep enough in the groundwater to intercept contamination coming from septic systems. And then there's a chemical and biological reaction or process that strips the nitrate out of the water.
It's a great theory, and everybody thinks it has a lot of potential, but
Nobody's,
we'll be first if we actually get to the point of putting a serious sized one on the ground.
I have a relevant question. Does anyone know what happened in the recent storm here on Cape Cod with the one in front of Webner? It got overwhelmed once by salt water, and I wondered whether it got overwhelmed again by salt water this time.
I don't know, and I don't want to critique the one at Webner entirely, but I think with Virginia alludes to the fact that the next scale up of this technology to see how it works, finding the right place to intercept the entire freshwater plume and protecting it from salt water over the top and or back intrusion is part of the next step on
Big time.
figuring out how to do all this. You know, the one at Webner, I would characterize it as about a 6 foot or 7 foot deep trench they dug and filled. The technology for the permeable reactive barriers for scaling it up probably means we're coming back a little bit from the shoreline, because not all water comes right in at the water salt interface. A lot of it goes lower and comes up. So now we're probably talking maybe a 15, 18, 20 foot deep trench someplace,
right?
and laying in some fairly stable column of wood chips, and worrying about settlement and things like that.
I vaguely remember that, and correct me if I'm wrong, saltwater or freshwater floats on saltwater, or vice versa. What is it?
It's freshwater slopes on.
Right, salt water is heavy.
Freshwater stays on top of saltwater.
But
Yeah.
that doesn't account for storm surges.
Well, but my point is, a lot of times you don't have to go deep with these trenches according to some of the work that's been
Yeah,
done
The reason to get
by Ken Foreman.
reason to get a consultant on board. We met with Ken, Steve and I didn't talk to him. I mean, the real exercise will be, once we pick a demonstration spot through this next exercise, what's the real groundwater lens like in that area? Is it clean on the bottom and more nitrogen on the top, more nitrogen on the bottom? I mean, there's several variables in there that we need to work our way through.
Right.
But the fact is, you don't always have to go down deep to intercept the fresh water, because it's going to float on top of the saltwater intrusion that's coming in from the bay.
Depends on where you put it in. If you're doing it in, like right near the water, maybe across people's lawns and everything, or if you come back to the street and now the street's up 4 or 5 feet higher than the front water edge, because it's easier to get the rights to do that and make a continuous barrier. So there's several variables here to work through.
Right,
Can I make
Virginia.
one more comment? The answer is going to be site-specific. The Cape Cod Commission, 8 years ago or so, knew about permeable reactive barriers, and they did several vertical wells sampling every foot. They had to go down 25 feet into the groundwater in Seacoast Shores before they finally got out of the nitrate. So that's a fairly deep trench. So we will have to look at it peninsula by peninsula and definitely location by location.
Steve. Ron.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I mean, how long has the Webner project been in?
Probably at least 5, 6 years.
Yeah, I was going to say close to 10.
So, yeah,
For a while.
Yeah,
Because what I think it'd be interesting now to actually dig down into it and see what
it looks like.
you
Yeah.
know, because
Right.
there's discussion about it last 10 years, 30 years, whatever it may be. We could at least get a sense of what's
Right.
going on there.
right.
And,
Whether it's degraded or
yeah,
whether
how
the
much-
chips
yeah.
are still
Yeah.
functioning.
I should tell you that they really don't know how long they last because
Right.
they've been, the original finding of this was a natural setting that had been there for perhaps thousands of years. They don't know. And so they were just tracking a plume of nitrogen and noticed it stopped at a certain point. They dug down and found this degraded wood that it was passing through. They had no idea. This is in Canada. They had
Water.
no idea how old it was, but
Mhm.
obviously it hadn't degraded so much that it didn't work
Yeah.
in all that time.
That's good.
And there's interesting variations on this theme where if you use the wood chips and they don't seem to be doing their job, you can add vegetable oil and it will rejuvenate them.
That's obviously an idea you've acquired.
Yes, I'm
That's
going
the
to
first time I've heard that one.
Make a salad out of it?
it's amazing what people think of. Well, we're gonna find out if it works here in Falmouth.
Right.
Any other reports on RFPs? Or
That's it.
Just so I can, the stormwater one, which is sort of out there down the road. I don't know if I'm volunteering or not, but perhaps at the right moment in time, I'd be willing to go with somebody else and go maybe meet one more time with Peter, find out what he's doing, and try to map out what we should be doing about that as the year opens up on the stormwater issue.
That would be great.
That's exactly what should happen here. We did meet with Peter a while ago, and
Yeah, way back at the beginning, just to find out what the town's already doing for stormwater.
right.
Right.
Should maybe
But
go-
they've got projects, and we could align with those if we, it might be useful.
Great idea.
Good. Great. Well, the Woods Hole group being here, you're now a group. And our policy is going to be, as these contracts get let, to bring the winners in and have a conversation with them about what we expect and what they think we expect, and make sure we're all on the same page. Ron has agreed to be the liaison on the aquaculture piece with the Woods Hole group. We'll have a member be the liaison in each case as these come forth. Virginia's doing the one with the engineering, and as they come along, we'll have others. So everyone here will have an RFP to be married to, or at least to shepherd. Woods Hole group, you're on. If you could pull yourselves up to the microphone, that would be
Okay,
good.
there are 3 microphones, I see 3 of you, so
You might as well come around, yeah.
even if you say nothing, when you look in front of the microphone, you'll be on TV.
Where's the camera?
You're on it.
You're on the camera.
Cameras. They're all around you.
Okay,
Big Brother is
The
watching.
real question is, where's the teleprompter and is it functional?
Try to wing this one. Well, I don't know everyone here. My name's John Brawley. I'm a marine ecologist at Woods Hole Group. I've been with Woods Hole Group for about 6 months now. Before that, I had my own practice, and I also have an oyster farm in Duxbury. I've been running for about 7 or 8 years. So I've been growing oysters. I've been doing active aquaculture for that period of time. And so I'll let Heidi introduce herself.
Sure, yep, I'm Heidi Clark, and I actually wrote my dissertation on exactly this subject, that is whether, oysters or other filter feeding shellfish could be used as sort of a biological remediation technique for nitrogen overloaded water bodies in the 90s, and so it's nice to see a full-scale project being carried out, because my work was sort of theoretical and anecdotal, and I wrote a little very simple math model to talk about the likelihood of algae blooms and that sort of thing. And so it's really nice to see the town doing an experiment to look at really the effect of oysters, in this case, I guess, on sort of water quality and nitrogen remediation. And I've been with Woods Hole Group for quite a while, maybe 8 or 10 years.
And your background is?
I did sort of biology and environmental studies, by undergrad and graduate work.
Okay.
And so I work for Woods Hole Group part-time, and I also work for a landscape construction company part-time. So it's a nice mix.
And my name is Elise Leduc. I'm a coastal scientist with Woods Hole Group. Fairly new there. I started earlier this summer. And I'll be assisting John and Heidi with this project. And in case you're interested, my educational background was biology and environmental studies in undergrad and coastal environmental management in grad school.
Why don't we take a minute and introduce ourselves so you know who's in the room? We have a sort of an ad hoc member, but from the finance committee, you oversee what we're doing.
I'm Stephen Fassett. I'm a fan of wastewater treatment. I'm a member of the finance committee and a few other things.
I'm Steve Rafferty. I'm an environmental engineer, and I've been on this committee from its inception.
I'm Ron Zweig. I work in aquaculture, coastal planning, mangroves, marine protected areas, doing a lot of different things. A lot of aquaculture.
I'll warn you, he advises countries how to do this. So be prepared for some serious questions and input. I'm Eric Turkington. I've been on this committee since the beginning, and former selectman, former state rep, and immersed in wastewater for the last couple of years, much to my
I don't know if
surprise.
you want to say it that way. In the State House, maybe. But
20 years at the state legislature. Apparently it's a terrific background for this sort of thing.
I'm Virginia Valiela. I'm a longtime former selectman and DPW commissioner, and I've been on this review committee since its inception and was the first chairman.
I'm Win Monroe. I've got a background in economics and energy economics, and I joined this committee out of a long-term interest in cleaning up the Cape.
And I'm Matt Patrick, former selectman, former state rep, and now at the Westport River Watershed Alliance as their executive director. And I lay claim to starting some of this for eco toilets, the demonstration project.
I'm Steve Layton. I'm a retired mechanical engineer and instrument person, and I've been involved in the Oyster Pond Environmental Trust.
Yeah, that's who we are.
I forgot to mention, I also did my dissertation on Wacoit Bay with your husband
Yeah.
20 years ago,
Okay.
where I did groundwater modeling and did a reconstruction of the time that nitrogen was entering the watershed and when it would come out, and then eventually did some ecosystem response models that's according to those predictions.
Your work in Duxbury has gotten a lot of attention, actually.
The aquaculture.
Yes.
Yeah. The Island Creek Oyster Company has been very successful over the last 10 years or so, and we've been growing a lot of oysters, I guess. So
How many acres?
total that are leased out in Duxbury? There are, I think, 66, something like that.
Wow.
That vary in levels of production. Some growers are full-time that utilize. We have a 3 acre per person maximum. And some of them are full production, and some are more hobby farms. You know, maybe growing 100,000 seed a year to 3 to 5 million a year, that kind of range. But yeah, we're very happy to be part of this project, and what we've been making progress so far. It's been we haven't really had a kickoff meeting yet, so it's good to get together here, and as much as required, we'd like to get together even on kind of an unofficial or ad hoc basis and make sure we're working together to communicate. We have a few tactical memos that we're preparing to deliver to you fairly soon. The first one we're doing is an evaluation of the viability test from last summer. We have some information on that, and there may be more information and background that we have to collect from you or from others in town, just to make sure we have everything, all the facts. We're researching the capacity of shellfish, of this type of activity to remove or sequester nitrogen in these types of systems. So we've conducted literature reviews, talked to scientists, read a lot of papers. We're putting that information together to come up with basically ranges of minimum, maximum means in terms of what you could expect based on different kind of alternatives you could consider in here. Different grow-out types, different numbers of shellfish, for how long they're there, and all in context of what the TMDL is saying. And talking to Ron, there's some interesting ways of looking at that in terms of the TMDL. It's really, it's not a load reduction, it's a load interception or a change in the in situ conditions of the estuary. So we're preparing that document. That also goes through a series of tasks that are in the RFP that have to do with permitting, really the viability of a demonstration process and then a long-term program. We also are we're running a stock completing a stock assessment of Little Pond, hopefully on Monday, if the weather agrees with us. We've done one site visit. We did some test digging, looked at some of the conditions, figured out what we needed to really conduct the assessment. We have some requests into DMF to get some guidance from them in terms of what they may have been doing historically to assess shellfish stocks in these ponds. We want to try to be consistent with their methods as much as possible, if that makes good sense, makes sense for the project and to them. But we haven't received any real response yet. It's going to take them a few more days, I think. We also have a request into DMF to get some sort of example of contaminated area management plans from municipalities, because that's something that the town would need to develop with DMF to get the right permit for relaying from a prohibited area like Little Pond to public beds through the relay program. So that's in progress right now. We've been working with John Mendes on getting that information, and we've actually begun the actual management plan, drafting that management plan to support the demonstration project. So that's underway now. Do you have anything to add?
Just one comment. John has been in touch with Chuck Martinson just to talk about the project and the stock assessment. So Chuck is kind of in the loop. We're hoping to really keep the communication lines open and flowing between the relevant stakeholders and their representatives. So those efforts are being made too.
I've been firing off a number of emails around this, and probably wish I would stop sending out so many.
So the background information might as well swamp them.
Well, no, it's good on that. It's an interesting, I actually went back recently to read what we were tasked with by the Board of Selectmen for our actual responsibilities. And interestingly, we're tasked to actually oversee and manage all of these things that are going forward, and that we're to assign and or utilize other town resources as necessary to achieve that. And this is probably one of the first cases beyond sort of straight engineering, which fits nicely with the DPW, that's out there. And so where you're the sort of designated lead person, I'd maybe suggest that we as a group might sort of indicate that, so that's clear to them. I think you have to keep Chuck Martinson aware of everything you're doing, because my understanding was ultimately it will fall under his responsibility or control as the designated agent of the Board of Selectmen for whatever the town does or doesn't do. So I think, while there may be some disagreement we get from other people that think they might be at a key role once we talk to other town people, I think at this moment in time, letting Chuck, basically CCing Chuck and Ron and just about everything you're doing is probably a key element, with the concurrence of the rest of the board, that's a reasonable thing to do.
Sure.
There's also, I think, a need fairly early here to determine how to talk with Brian Dudley. from the DEP.
Mhm.
Because ultimately, the exercise of what we're doing is going to have to be quantifiable back to him for some measurable values. And he's got some thoughts around that, so again, early on, maybe reach out to Brian Dudley. Glad to hear you talking with Mendez and/or Moles, Division of Marine Fisheries. Then there's the, how do we loop Brian Howes in at this point with the water quality monitoring exercise? And that maybe can be a little bit later, where they've got some proposals about doing water quality monitoring going forward, if you will. You guys may have some thoughts on that we need to interact with them at some point. So those are the three things that come to my mind that are floating out there. But I think the whom you're communicating with and who needs to know what you're doing, I think it's absolutely Chuck Martin's. Even if Chuck doesn't want to participate, I mean, we maybe need to reach out to him and have you spoken with Chuck yet?
Well, I've talked with him periodically.
But just make sure that he's clear that we do, you know, he may come back and say, I don't have enough time or I need help, and then we can deal with that issue at some point, okay?
I think he's okay with it. We met with you and him and
Yeah, okay.
and myself a couple of weeks ago, and he was definitely participating and
Yeah.
wanted to be in the loop.
Well, as far as the
No, he's come to the meetings, he's participated, but he's more than once along the way sort of expressed a little reservation about where is this gonna go to and what does that mean in relation to everything else he's gotta do. So there's maybe a who's really on board with Chuck, or is Chuck's adjunct at some point designated in the town. But just thinking ahead to, we don't wanna suddenly be in January or February and realize that we have 3 months to get somebody to help Chuck out, if that's what we have to do as part of this demonstration.
There's a
Like
piece.
summer intern or something like that.
There's a piece in this town meeting to hire a shellfish person within the Department of Natural Resources, and if the town meeting goes along with it, they'll be
Right.
doing
That
that.
may fit
Right.
in too, okay.
But it will still take a month or two
Oh, sure.
to do it. My question to you was going to be, have you worked out some sort of timeline that gets you from where we are now to a plan that would be ready to put in the water in May, April?
Yeah, well, the RFP has December 31st as the deadline for all the tasks.
For the tasks
So
that
that's-
you're working
that's
on
our
now?
goal, yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, we started a little bit later than what we anticipated as October 1st, but
I see. You think you can,
Sure.
you'll be able to meet that schedule?
that's what we're aiming for, yeah.
Okay.
We'll, if there are any issues in the next month or so that we feel is gonna slow us down significantly, we'll come right to you and let you know
Okay.
why.
If the information I had is correct, that the inlet to Little Pond was closed last week by Sandy, is that going to affect anything that you do, in the timing of anything you do, or does it have to be,
It is open now,
it is open now?
yes.
And I went down today, it looked like it was
Oh, good.
flowing
It's
pretty
not
well.
as bad as we thought.
Did someone dig it out?
That I don't know.
Oh,
Well,
I know
I
I
didn't
went
even know
by
it
a
was
couple
closed.
days ago, the road was closed, everything was closed,
Yes.
everything was covered in sand.
Right.
And
Yes.
then went by today and the town presumably has removed the sand from the road, the parking
Wow.
lots. And
Or- And the channel?
And the
the
channel?
channel is flowing, it was all
Channel's
flowing out.
Excellent.
correct.
Thank
Right.
you.
Good for somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would probably affect everything if
Mm.
it stayed closed.
Right.
We'd have a problem there.
That's great
Check.
news.
Chuck had this theory that hurricanes occasionally coming through would be the way we're going to deal with the bottom muck issue. That I don't know if we have any evidence of that actually happening now that we've had a hurricane.
We didn't have much rain with it.
No.
I think that's there's a forecast of 10 inches of rain or something,
Right.
Yeah.
right,
That
it
was
didn't
it.
happen, so
Mm.
that can help give it a little shove.
We were
I don't
out
know.
in that kind of, what they call, it's called a flood alluvial plain
Mm.
inside of the inlet
Yeah.
last week, 2 weeks ago. And so we took a good look at it. And so when we go back on Monday, we'll be able to tell if it's all fresh sand or if all the eelgrass is gone and whatnot.
I think they call it the inside delta.
Inside delta, yes.
And-
Or the flood
The
delta.
flood delta.
Or the
John
flood,
Ramsey calls it the flood delta.
flood delta, okay?
Yeah.
John, following up on Virginia's question about December 31st, what are your biggest concerns about what you have to do between now and December 31st and getting it done?
I don't have any major concerns right now. just, I mean, unforeseen delays in getting to critical information that would be required to complete the management plan. The first task is pretty straightforward. It's based on collecting existing information and coming to agreement with certain processes within the town that we can discuss with you, I think. The management plan relies a bit on Division of Marine Fisheries, and that, in my experience, I mean, they get busy and they prioritize their time, and this may be not one of their high priority.
Well, I would suggest that if you talk with Brian Dudley, it might move up the list, because ultimately, figuring out how to measure this, as you say, that'll be able to develop some level of credits for consuming nitrogen is central to maybe several estuaries beyond our own for the Cape.
Right. So I think there are two things. One is coming to a consensus in developing the management plan on what the town would like to do. What's the preferred alternative? So we can recommend how many presumably oysters you'd put in some kind of gear, and come up with that kind of scenario, that plan. But then the permitting issue of what happens to those shellfish once they come to the end of the growing season, prior to their legal size, they legally have to be removed.
That's a question. Do they legally have to be removed?
In prohibited waters, they can't be legally sized shellfish unless the state makes a special permit. But their policy is that they have to be sub-legal in this type of situation.
And 2 summers would make them more than sub-legal, would make them the legal size?
Well, another question is, we just in Massachusetts passed a rule or regulation that the legal size for aquaculture shellfish for oysters can be 2.5 inches. There's a petite size now. You need a license or an endorsement from DMF. But whether it's 2.5 or 3 inches, you can. I mean, it seems that Little Pond's a good place to grow oysters, especially in the surface waters. They grow fast, from what I can see. So some percentage of them could be legal length by the end of the first growing season.
Really?
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
I mean, it's not unheard of. You can get maybe 5 or 10% of them that will be long and skinny, but the majority won't be. After 2 years, certainly.
Right.
Your reaction was they grew well, right?
Do you have any concern at all about making sure that we're going to have all the permits in place to do this next April?
The feeling I got from DMF when I talked to them about it was that, well, there were 2 permit pathways. One is a research permit, which at the end the shellfish would have to be removed and destroyed. I was told that permit pathway is more rapid. It's a quicker process than a contaminated area management plan, a special permit for municipalities in prohibited waters, which requires a management plan called a contaminated area management plan. What that entails is still unknown to me right now. It's a plan that I think we work with DMF to give them the information they need, like a time series of what you're going to do, where it's going to go, and who's going to monitor this, and what's the ultimate fate, and who's going to oversee a relay program or a process, a depuration process. I learned, well, it's in their shellfish planting guidelines at DMF. Municipal relays have to be applied to public grounds and not to aquaculture. And I confirmed that when I talked to Mike Hickey. He said that you can't take the seed from Little Pond and sell it to, Joe Smith, the oyster grower. That's the current policy they have. So whether the town wants to do something like that, or whether that extends to public grounds that can be open for commercial taking, we need to figure that out with DMF and figure out what the town wants to do.
For the benefit of the Nielsen 7.5 rating audience that we draw, could you just explain what you mean when you use the phrase contaminated? Because that's one of those words that can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah, so Little Pond is prohibited, is a closed shellfish growing area. So DMF has shellfish growing areas that are usually naturally occurring embayments, and they all have names. And they have monitoring locations in each one. And they fecal coliform has to be below certain thresholds. They have a geometric mean threshold and a 90th percentile threshold and a certain frequency of exceeding those, which tells them, which allows the water body to be open or closed, or conditionally open for shellfishing.
And what's that number?
It is,
2,000 per 100 ml colonies?
no, the 90th percentile is 14, most probable number, and the
14 fecal.
Yep.
Not total, fecal colony per 100 ml.
And 49 for the geometric mean. And that has to be over the last 30 samples taken.
Okay.
So they go out and sample a sampling location. They take the data from those most recent 30 samples, and if they exceed the 50th or the 90th percentile, they close. Or they have to demonstrate it can be under those thresholds for a certain amount of time before they'll open.
Is there existing data as to what the level of fecal colonies are in per 100 ml in Little Pond?
I can only assume that there is existing data. I don't know what the record is.
He's got that.
Yeah.
Okay.
In
You
some
check
cases,
it, though.
they may not sample certain, be lower frequency if it's.
Just thinking ahead, if they, on one hand, while we're looking at what we can do, if the fecal number is prohibitively high, it's probably hard to knock it down, but if it's down at a certain point, then you start looking at things like wildlife, and,
Right.
you know, other uses in the area that may be raising up, and you start educating people, you know, clean up after your dog, or whatever,
Right,
bring the pond back to a passing state again.
right.
But I don't know the numbers.
Yeah, we should get those data and evaluate them.
Does it make sense to pursue both types of permits in parallel, so that the research one is the backup that you're more likely to get, but the more desirable one, if you get it, you morph over into that, and instead of delaying the desirable knowledge by having one after the other?
Right. We've thought of this, and one approach could be if we feel that that process might take longer than the next growing season or this spring coming up, to apply for a research permit for the demonstration project, that maybe that could be transferred into a municipal relay permit, special permit, during the time that we're actually doing it.
Later on.
Yeah.
Mhm. Sort of evolve.
Can a research project be 2 million? I mean, the numbers we're talking about here is a lot of oysters.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
But
But the issue is destruction at the end. So this,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I
part
get
of it is, and this is the conundrum, because you guys are the expert. I mean, how many oysters do you have to set out there and grow to be able to measure something that you can show to Brian Dudley
Right.
and Brian House? I mean, if it was 3 cages of oysters, we would have had that information this summer, but it's more than that. And the question is, you know, that gets back into how many, sampling plan and everything. So, again, back to your point of, we have to go down the path of it being a experiment again. But we'll have to put in $500,000 to set up a system where we can get reasonable value and measure something. Then that may be where we go. On the other hand, if we can fit, pick your random number, you had whatever, you had 6 or 8 million at one point?
No, it was under 2 million, around 2 million, up to
You thought
about
that
2
was the
million.
maximum carrying capacity? Was
No, that was like for a certain demonstration
Right, but
effect.
at one point you looked at what you thought you could fit into your little pond, if you went all out.
I thought it was 3 million.
Let's see, it's about 6 million.
6 million.
Wow.
So
That's like, but that would
But
be
that was the all-
maxed out.
Yeah, that was
That's
all-
right,
yeah,
right,
and so-
right.
So, you mean, we shouldn't
Yeah.
have to put 6 million in to be able to measure what they're doing
Right.
and be able to
Right.
demonstrate the state. So again, stepwise, if we can get through the plan, get out there next year, show what they're doing, and then the year after that, come back and up it again if we're getting good results and be making progress. Maybe where we have to go. I'm not predicting the answer yet, but
Right.
we don't want to get cut off because we've chosen the wrong permit, I think.
And does it make sense to
Well,
say
I
something
destroy
about
them
this,
all.
the critical path and intersection with the baseline monitoring? That you may have done 90% of this already, but at some point, you could gain information from Brian Howes as to where, assuming you're not blanketing the entire estuary with oysters, where is the optimum place to put them? For instance, he would argue further upstream, subject to other limitations. But then the information flow goes the other way. When you say, we want to put them at such and such a place, then we can tell him that he doesn't have to monitor as many locations and save some money there. So is that
Yeah.
timing? Do we need to
I
talk
think
about deadline?
think-
I've forgotten the deadlines on the contract
It's
for
the end of
baseline.
January. We're going to get a report from him the end of January on the baseline monitoring that was done for this year's, 2012's, viability test. We'll also be getting some significant historical history on Little Pond itself, going back all the way to 2005. They've been collecting data every summer, but they hadn't, and they ran the tests, but then they didn't synthesize the data. So we're going to get both of those reports the end of January, and your report's going to come in more or less the end of December.
Right.
So I think that'll work.
Well, maybe before the report comes out, there's the data already kind of out there, and he's looked at them, and maybe I can go over and
just
go over and talk to him
chat
for
with
an
him.
afternoon
Yeah.
and work together on
Right.
on getting his input on
Mhm.
where he thinks, you know, a demonstration project should take place along the axis of the estuary. And it's probably the same place we would too. I mean,
It'd be nice to have Freddie approve.
yeah, I'm sure we will.
Yes. He cast a fairly wide net. He expanded his sampling range from May to October. Normally the data is only in July and August. And there are currently 4 stations, and he added 5 stations more.
Right.
So our sense is probably some of those stations are either redundant or not relevant. But until we learn more from you as to where you think the optimum place is to put the oysters, we can't begin to deal with what we are calling baseline monitoring, which is
Right.
this ongoing monitoring of the pond.
And there are other constraints, like what the existing habitat is. If you don't want to have a big floating rack system over eelgrass habitat, for example.
Right.
Access might be another issue.
Yep.
Visual
I don't think
effects.
there's any eelgrass in there.
There's a tiny amount in the
Right.
southern part, and that's
Yeah.
why I think Brian has suggested you're in sort of the middle reaches is where he
Right.
that's where he beefed up the sampling points.
Well, so the oysters, you know, the way they're removing nitrogen from the system is through phytoplankton, through algae.
Right.
And you don't want to have them near the mouth where they're just going to be feeding off the sound.
Right.
You want at the head of the estuary, that water is going to have a longer residence time. That's where the nitrogen coming in from the watershed is actually being assimilated into biomass. And that's what you probably want to be feeding
Right.
the oysters.
There's a couple of constituencies that you really have to touch base with really soon. And one is obviously the Conservation Commission, which you were trying to do. The other is the hunter-gatherers and the aquaculturalists who both already have interests in our waters and in shellfish, and are very suspicious of each other and of you, because they're not quite sure what you have in mind, but they're afraid it's not going to be good for them. So you really do have to listen to them, among other reasons, because they know a lot about these waters. And the history of the waters and the history of regulation and the history of shellfish, they know a lot, and they'll be a great resource, but you really have to.
There's one more group, if I may, which is the abutters and the users of Little Pond.
Right.
So that's another group as well, which as I mentioned to you about our contact with the T-Ticket Civic Association. And also we should engage the Falmouth Heights community organization there as
Right.
well.
The other piece is dealing with neighbors is security issues. And how do you protect your crop, not necessarily from the neighbors, but from other people who might decide there's a lot of nice shellfish here and they're almost grown, and
Right.
maybe we'll just help ourselves.
Right, and that's probably where Chuck
Is worried about.
Watson comes in.
That's why Chuck wears a gun.
But we could have, a real pond watchers type, a neighborhood watch,
you
get
may-
everybody
That's
involved.
that's what you'd want.
Maybe
Yeah.
the neighbors
Yeah.
could
Just there, yeah. They're very interested
The
so
neighborhood
far.
oyster watch.
Yeah, neighborhood oyster watch, right.
I had a question. When you did the viability test, you used Paul Afsa's dock, I believe, to
We
launch
used,
from?
well, not, we used it was actually the end of Narragansett Street, which is.
Which
is
goes
where
right
his
down
house
to the
is.
water.
Right.
Yeah,
And then that was the first point, but then we also worked up at the, what is it, at Barb Schneider's Association's point further north in Green Pond. That
yeah,
was-
but I'm just talking
Right, right.
about Little Pond. Your access point in Little Pond was Narragansett Street. Is that what you're saying?
That was one, and then there was another one right off of, near the mouth of the estuary. We put some in off, I think it's Vineyard Street there maybe, I'm not
Could
sure
be.
which street is.
Uh,
But down in the south part,
Okay.
Matt had put it in there.
I
And,
see. And that was suggested by Chuck Martin?
Charlie, yeah, it was coordinated to try and have lower, middle, and upper parts of the estuaries. So we
Okay.
had them in 3 different places.
Uh-huh.
But they started in Narragansett Street in one case, and then it was Green Harbor Road at Jack Rowe's dock in Green Pond.
Yeah, you're back
Yeah,
to Green
yeah.
Pond.
Yeah,
right?
well, it's a
Wonderful.
3. Yeah,
It's
but
my question, what
Yeah.
I'm zeroing in on is, we need to think about the magnitude of the operation and what kind of facilities you need. Do you have to have a dock, or can you go right off the bank into the water? And how often you will need to have that access? I mean, will you be visiting it once a week, once a month?
Right, so to grow 2 million oysters in a floating oyster grow system, assuming there are 6 shells, we'll just take for example, and each one can hold a bag, a 9 millimeter or 12 millimeter mesh bag. About 1,000 to 1,500 oysters per bag, something like that. It comes to about 200 of these units to do 2 million, on somewhere around 200. And so the considerations are getting them in the water and getting them out,
Right.
and having access to maintain them, to control the fouling on a whatever basis that you feel is necessary.
if you had 2-inch oysters in them, how many bags would you need for that, though? It would be a lot more, right?
Yeah,
If they grew to 2 inches.
basically double the size.
Yeah.
If you want to grow them, if you want to grow them for market, you want to have lower densities because you want
Right.
to have nicer shaped oysters. If you want to grow them for restoration purposes and not really care if they're bent up and growing into each other, you can get away with higher densities. If you want to control fouling and keeping them from growing into the mesh, you have to go out on a weekly or every 2 weeks and take those
Right.
bags and shake them around and get, you're going to have their waste accumulating inside the bags, so you want to kind of get.
Is there a paper street that runs along the entire western shore of Mara Vista?
Well, the answer is yes and no.
Much in the water.
Much of that paper street is underwater.
It's underwater.
But there is a paper street.
Yeah, I mean.
That's right.
Yeah.
And at the lower end of the pond, and actually there's a place certainly near the upper end, where the road can take you down to the water pretty nicely.
There's a public dock, or a public ramp.
On Little Pond?
Yeah.
Is it
Where?
deep enough? Is it deep
Where?
enough to
It's
be
deep enough to
navigable
put
by
in-
whatever craft
Matt,
you want?
where is that? Public dock?
Public ramp.
A public ramp.
You're thinking of Harrington Street,
I-
right? On Great Pond?
You point to it?
Yeah,
Like that one?
yeah, Little Pond, I don't think so.
Might be something up here, I think.
Show me,
Yeah, maybe I have the wrong pond.
I think you,
Well, is
Yeah, I know
part
what
of
you-
your study the access issue seems to be a real issue that you have to solve.
Right.
But not just for your research project, but for the ultimate scale.
But I think
Right.
there's a paper street that
I
runs.
mean,
I think it's at the end of this.
Yeah.
On the western side, though, yeah.
in that the abutters might have a different attitude
Well,
toward a short-term
This is
research project
And
than a
the southern
longer
part
term.
is actually
or
exists.
whatever.
Yeah,
it was Great Pond.
it was Great
Great
Pond.
Pond, okay.
Yeah,
That's the
okay.
fuck.
We'll find out. Chuck will
I'm
know.
just-
Chuck will know where the
I'm
access
just
points
thinking-
are.
No, I'm just
Commercial
thinking,
scale, yeah.
the ultimate aim of all this research, is to be able to do it commercially, eventually, right? I mean, one of the initial arguments was that this would have a negative cash flow, a good cash flow for the town, that someone would be paying the town to do this.
That
Or at
was,
least it would be neutral.
That was a desirable side effect, but the main purpose was the nitrogen removal, and if it turned
Right,
out to be
right.
profitable, that would be even better, but.
Right, well, okay, but if, what I'm saying is, after, let's say the research project ends and is wildly successful beyond all our dreams, and so you want to scale it up and do it year after year into the indefinite future, and maybe have somebody even paying a slight amount, or at least not charging to do it, because they're getting viable oysters out of it. We need to know that they have access, as well as that you have access just for the research project. I'm just saying there are two different stages of the access. And then a butter might say, sure, I don't mind you using my dock for a year, but then if it's for the next 20 years, and they perceive the person as a commercial shellfisherman, they might feel differently. So you might want to set some groundwork for having a really good access.
Again,
We got a long way to go.
There is what amounts to a public road way down the whole western side of Narrow Vista Peninsula, and all the roads come down to and intersect with that. So in essence, all those roads that run down are town roads, come right down to the pond, and at some point if this thing goes forward, there's probably a decision about where on which road and how do you create some type of access and what is it, and that's the next step of the whole process.
It gets a little more complicated because it was never taken or accepted as a public way.
That's right.
Whether it's in the water or underwater. It was part of the original Mara Vista subdivision, which presumably is.
So we get into the next level of all this thing, which was we get into everything we're putting in there, who owns what, which roads are, what type of roads, are they ancient and traveled ways, are they
all the people
paper
who
streets or unaccepted roads?
all the people who live in Mara Vista have the rights to use those roads, but it may not be everyone in town. We're going to find out.
We'll find out.
So those are additional considerations is, you know, if you have a couple hundred of these things, you know, at the end of the year, they're heavy, they're fouled up. They take a few people to, basically you want to put them on a barge or like a pontoon boat in this type of system. So you don't, are outboard motors allowed in Little Pond, or is that
I don't know, but I think that for something like this, there might be, because it'd be
town.
rare, it'd be like once or twice a year you use it, right?
So that's the picture is
Electric motor, maybe.
multiple loads getting the gear out of the water, and then having a place in the wintertime to store it is another
storage.
consideration.
Okay.
Something that I deal with all the
Yeah.
time.
Everything has to come out for the winter?
If the risk of leaving it in is that it will be ice damaged,
That's the risk,
Yeah.
just the ice damage.
ice or storm, or just continually being fouled so it is not as effective every year.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
But
exactly.
they could live in the water over the year, the oysters part.
Oh, they could, yeah. I mean,
Do you take your oysters out every winter?
we
In
no,
Bucksburn?
I plant them on the bottom. So I take them out. There are several methods of doing this. Most of us take them out of the bags at the end of the growing season in September, when they're about 2 inches, and then we spread them on the bottom. And some of us keep them in bags over the winter too. And that,
You're concerned with seasonal nitrogen removal,
Well,
or lack thereof in the winter?
that's obviously another factor, right?
Well, they don't do much in the winter.
No.
You know,
No.
they're
once the
kinda
water's
sleepy.
40 degrees, they go dormant.
They go dormant at 40 degrees.
Well, putting them in the water in the winter here is probably not an option because you've got this black muck.
Yes,
On the bottom. right.
yes, I don't think the
But I
bottom,
think if they move them down to the southern part where it's sandy, it might be to just keep them there and then move them back up in the spring.
The salinity wouldn't matter to them over that time period.
Uh-huh.
oh,
Another
the
thing-
salinity's pretty uniform throughout.
Another
Yeah,
method is, and
right.
Chuck, we were talking about this a couple weeks ago, is pitting them in the winter, taking them out of the gear, and either keeping them in the bags or taking them out, putting them in totes, like fish totes, and keeping them moist. And you can keep them in walk-in coolers or root cellars, and they can stay alive for 3 months out of the water, as long as they're dormant. So in December, around December 15th to Christmas time, that's when a lot of the folks on the the towns like Wellfleet will pit their oysters to take them in for the winter.
What about issues of theft or something of your oysters, if you put them out on the bottom, is it people basically respect?
Oh, where I grow them?
Yeah, where you grow them. So they,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a large area, so
Uh-huh.
we don't mark it, let people know where they are. They'd have to dredge them and, or use rakes, and they'd be caught.
Okay, now I'm just saying though, that
Taken care
that's,
of.
you know, just a question, because that's something that has been raised as a concern.
Well, so, and part of that has to do with DMF's ability to permit this would be the assurance that people won't be attracted to them and take them and sell them, eat them, consume them, which is a big concern of theirs.
Steve?
Going back to the flood delta again, it was mentioned in passing maybe a year ago that we might ask for increased dredging of the flood delta to have essentially be a poor man's inlet widening. And I don't know if anything more was said about that, but I never heard anyone say anything bad about it, except that it had a finite cost associated with it. And you should know that if it's true that that's still a possibility, it's another reason you wouldn't want to put the oysters
At the lower end.
at the lower end. And you should be aware that it might happen.
Okay. Which would disrupt the,
There wouldn't be a flood delta.
right.
Well, right now, you couldn't put them there because it's only about 3 inches deep at low tide.
Right.
Right. Yeah, so all these kind of come into play when you consider where to put them, and then how, once the, think about where it's gonna be and how many oysters and all the nitrogen dynamics, but then it's the labor that, you have to figure out the labor that goes into taking the stuff out, maintaining it, putting it back in,
That's
and,
right.
and what would be necessary to do that.
Right.
And there are different options.
Where do you get your labor? Who do you hire to do these kind of tasks?
Who do I?
Well,
So at home?
yeah.
Or-
Yeah.
I do a
No,
lot of
actually, I
it
think
myself.
we're asking, I'm gonna
Or-
try this. So far, through the proposal you submitted, we've retained you to take us through 2 of 3 tasks that we identified.
Yep.
What's not been raised yet, will have to probably come up, I would think, in the December timeframe, is where do we go with their plan
Mm.
to retain somebody to actually run the demonstration project? And I don't know whether you have a partner that you would like to bring on board at that point with a subsequent 3rd stage proposal, or whether we have to go back out, we need to review where we actually stand with that.
Right, so the plan will go to the point where here's the labor requirements and the logistics, and then it's, what I'm assuming is then it's the town's decision whether,
To go
how,
forward.
how to actually implement that, whether it goes to a private group or if it's a town-sponsored, or if it's volunteers.
Woods Hole Group's not interested in running doing that.
I'm not sure.
You need to check.
That's not their
That's
business.
the question.
I think they'll know more after dealing with us for a while too.
He's already rethinking what he agreed to.
Yeah.
His interest is already
We'll
waning.
do it to the best interest of the town.
Okay, well, Steve's hit a good point, which is, the point of this is not to have a plan. The point of this is to get oysters in the water next year in a big way, in a measurable way, for our purposes and DEP's purposes, and
And maintained, visited every 2 weeks, so that
Right.
they live through to the end, to October, so that we get a full season's sense of how much they can actually remove and what are the operational problems.
So the plan will have all that operational.
That's
Right.
right. And
Costs
then,
and the
then we've got to
requirements.
figure, as you said, how they come out, where they get stored. So it is much of a big picture as from A to Z that you can
Right.
give us would be very helpful.
yeah. Do any of your experts know whether, if they stayed for 2 years, do they take out more nitrogen the second year, or first year, or does it matter?
Well, you would certainly, as the oysters grow, they grow more shell and soft tissue, so they would be storing more nitrogen. And then there's the whole denitrification question. So when oysters, filter out the phytoplankton and produce biodeposits, you're putting in sort of a nitrogen-rich organic material onto the sediment surface, and that can stimulate nitrification, denitrification, and so the transformation of organic nitrogen into atmospheric N2, which renders it biologically unavailable. So there's that piece too, which is less easily quantified. So theoretically they would, but the one really important point I would think is that you really need to get the animals out of the pond before they're legally harvestable, according to DMF. And
Okay.
so I did projects in 5 coastal ponds, one of which was Great Pond about 7 or 8 years ago. And we saw amazing growth from about a centimeter to legal size in at least 10, more like 25 or 30% of the animals
In one season.
And so if Little Pond, you know, oysters show growth that good, you wouldn't want to keep them in for you wouldn't be able to keep them in for 2 seasons.
And that's density dependent too. And
Density
if you have 100
exactly.
oysters in a bag, they're going to grow very quickly. But if you
Yeah.
have 1,000, they'll grow not as quickly, but you'll have 1,000 of them in there.
And we
with
did,
more
the
biomass.
experiments we did had just 100 in a bag, and so they had plenty of circulation and food and that sort of.
And you're planning on 1,500 in a bag?
That's what my experience is what one of these standard bags can support
Okay,
with maintenance too.
with maintenance.
Yeah, if you leave them alone for the whole growing season, you'll have some percent will die, and you'll have a ugly oyster.
A mess.
Yeah.
So if you set it up for this fast growth so that you have to take them out at the end of the season, does that finesse your winter problem too? Because now you're by definition not leaving them in, you're doing something else with them over the winter.
Right, you would relay them to whatever areas you've designated as a town to depurate them, which is a requirement from DMF. If you're going in a closed area, you have to remove the oysters before they're legally harvestable, and then you have to leave them for a period of time, and I think it's 6 months.
In at least one spawning cycle.
So, but you could do that if you had a designated area outside of the pond, and you wouldn't have to overwinter them, which would be nice.
Or we would destroy them
Or you could
Under
just
the
spray
research
them.
program.
under the research program.
Would this be in another estuary or out in the bay or the sound?
Could
or
be out
where?
in the sound.
Out in the sound?
We don't know yet.
So those are all components of the
We don't know.
contaminated area management plan.
Okay.
And it has to be defined
well,
where they
nobody's
would be
over.
moved to,
Right.
and Division of Marine Fisheries has to agree.
Yeah.
And they'd
who's
have to
gonna-
be protected, so you wouldn't
Right.
have any chance of having people go in and harvest them before the depuration was over.
Wover, okay.
I
How,
th- I
what
thi-
does protected mean, other than posting, do not fish?
I think patrols and posting and public awareness.
Okay.
Just-
Yeah, sort of back to Chuck in the plan.
But I think too that we should, you might want to look at this too, considering the regulations and what we're trying to do here as well. But to say, here's what we'd really like to achieve optimally. I mean, here's the process we'd like to go through. And then sit down with DMF and say, look, for this particular thing, how far can we go to meet our real optimal or preferred method is this, to do this, for the purpose of nitrogen mitigation in the
Right.
ponds. And just say, okay, we're doing this, and, you know, certain safeguards and assurances would be there, but
Right.
just to see what they would think, because it is something new
Yeah.
to the state. So.
Right. I think they're more prepared right now than they were 5 years ago to handle this. And I mean, it's conceivable they would want to start a little smaller than
Baby
the town
steps.
wants, maybe for the first year or two, and then
Mhm.
There's gonna be a balance between what the Division of Marine Fisheries is comfortable with and what we need to do to be able to take a measurement, and so.
right.
I think it's gonna be hard to get to the optimum in the first year,
Right,
but
right.
we'd like to be able to get measurable. in the
Just see how
first year.
close we can get to what we think is.
We'd like to be measurable in the
Right.
first year.
Right. I mean, measurable is also the thing about monitoring water quality is that it's variable, and you're taking discrete measurements. And if you come back 2 days later, after a weather event or something, you know, your nitrogen concentration could be well beyond the range of what the
Back
TMDL
to
is
the
based
discussion
on.
on baseline monitoring, Brian Howe's work.
Right. So the more data you have, the better, but also, and maybe, Bayesian statistics or something can be applied to this. But,
As long as it's not Boolean algebra.
What do you got
I
against
forgot
that?
about that.
Yeah.
But just one thing on the growth rates too, I think that to clarify, from my understanding, is that the relative growth rate, when they're small, the relative growth rate is much faster than when they're bigger.
True,
Because within 2 weeks, they may increase 100%.
right,
But the absolute growth rate is much higher when they're bigger.
right.
Because they may grow 10% or 1% of their total weight. And therefore, but it's a lot more mass, a lot more nitrogen is sequestered. So, right. So we're really, that's another point of what size do you aim for? Because it's going to be, but if you have more, like, so many more, like 100 in the bag or something instead of 75 or whatever it would be, then you get a similar thing, but the efficiency would be different. Just to look at some curves.
Any more comments or questions for the Woods Hole group?
Only one.
Yeah.
Having sat here through this and knowing what you've got to do, do you think there is an optimum time to come back and re-advise us as how you're doing a month from now? Does that sound reasonable timeframe, a month?
Yeah, are you,
6 weeks.
We meet first and third Thursdays of the month typically.
so how about every other meeting we?
That's a lot.
So we don't need a lot, we don't need to get a lot.
Wait,
Every
Ron,
6
give us
weeks.
a status update.
Every
Right,
6
right.
weeks.
It'll only be about 4 meetings, I think, before the,
Yeah, we
But we're
don't,
talking like when you have something
3.
substantive to come in and say,
Yeah.
this is where we're at, we've got a draft of something, we'd like to,
yeah,
give you the draft to make a presentation.
you let us know when you've got a point where you think it's worth coming
The
back
thing is that
with.
we only have 2 months.
Right.
Right, so the point is that if they, we're having a meeting on the 28th, then we have one, the first week of December might be a good time, and then they have time to.
Right. Well, if you're
Finish
ready
it.
and you have something significant to report, we can do that.
Yeah, that
But-
might
but
be
let's-
kind of
let's-
it is a tight timeline.
Right. Well,
This has been a little bit
We
more
know that.
informal, free-flowing, the next time around, we'll probably try to
Because-
be a little more condensed and tighter
Really?
about the time.
The next meeting would be when? It would be like close to Christmas,
Yeah,
and
well,
you
let's-
only have like a week.
well, let's let it rely on when
Yeah,
he's got
okay.
something to tell us.
Okay.
We've been joined by
Okay.
Jerry Patamas, who's the wastewater superintendent, and by Sia Karpos, who is our technical advisor. And do you two have any questions for the Woods Hole group before we let them go home?
I have your contract signed by all the official parties, and I have copies for the members as well as the
Beautiful.
engineering scope.
Oh,
Yeah.
good,
Distribute
okay,
later.
oh, great, thank you.
Great.
And I think, I'm not talking out of school, is the thing we really need, even if the report was a little bit longer, is the cost estimate, so we can go to town meeting. So that, to the extent there's flexibility on, we're debating words, but if we have a solid dollar number, I think that's very, very important to have.
Absolutely.
How often are town meetings? What town meeting would you
We're
go
having one next April, but you need the number by January.
to? Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about that position, that town meeting will decide on, shellfish aquaculture
Oh,
position? Is that-
it's a full-time position. It's going to be under Chuck Martinson. The Department of Natural Resources and the Shellfish Warden, there's been a consolidation of various positions, which has allowed the town, due to vacancies and retirements and so on. So the department has been restructured, but it allows us now to have 2 technically trained people, one in shellfish and one in herring, one in fish, anadromous fish. And they would both be answering to Chuck Martinson as head of the Natural Resources Department.
It's described as a fisheries technician. If the town meeting approves, it'll be filled early in the calendar year. It will be devoted to working diligently in shellfish propagation to enhance our local economy and natural fishery.
And it's a grade 7.
Grade 7, whatever.
I'm
That
not
entails?
sure whether it gives,
Doesn't have any dollar figure
it doesn't have
attached.
any dollar effect, because the dollars are in the existing budget, they're just
Exactly.
being moved
So-
around. So I can't tell you what it would pay, but if you call the personnel office, they would know.
Yeah, Jerry.
I would think that with time, the person would probably be very integrated in the implementation of this project.
That's what
Yes.
To what extent, we don't know, but he
Right.
would, you know, he would be someone that's on the ground all the time.
Or she.
Or
yeah.
she.
Or she.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was interested in.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you for
This has
joining us.
been very helpful. Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Heidi.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And you guys step forward and wire yourselves.
Right.
SIA has a couple of things to report on. One is the website, which is up.
Yeah.
And we
it
should
looks
give
good.
her a round of applause.
And it works.
Give me a deadline and I'll meet it.
That's right, with quality.
It makes us sound like we know what we're doing. It's really quite impressive.
Oh, good. I'm thrilled that you guys like it. Honestly, it's, you know, it was really a lot of fun to do. So I'm happy. I'm looking forward to content from you all to add, which I now have a great process for doing. So let's make it a dynamic outreach tool.
All right.
I will take all editorial comments, and I couldn't have done it without, again, George Trudeau. He is amazing. He was terrific, he was supportive, he answered my dumb programming questions and found all my little slash marks that I didn't mean to put in there. So George was great.
Yeah, terrific. Okay, fertilizer bylaw. You've both been to a precinct meeting. Did anything come up at either meeting about this subject?
Yes, yes, a couple of things came up. At the precinct 1 and 2, a gentleman who owns a golf course was present and reiterated the comments that I had presented to the board probably a month ago now, about golf courses do have resource areas that they fertilize within 100 feet of. And this particular golf course owner brought up the question, why are not golf courses exempt? Because we've done studies through the Cape Cod Commission. This particular person was saying that, and my response to him was, I had brought that information to the committee, and the committee was clear that they were expecting everybody to follow the bylaw equally, and that golf courses were not exempt, and duly noted. So the same comments that came from my personal phone calls came out at one meeting.
Good. Anything there?
No, I think it was interesting. It was the former chair of the Board of Health that actually brought it. I think that was Paul Ketchum that was speaking.
Yeah, I had no idea what it was.
Really?
Yeah.
What's he got to do with golf courses?
Maybe he plays, I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
well,
sure it was Paul
he's-
Ketchum that was talking.
Okay, Paul, I didn't recognize him,
He
but
doesn't own
he
any golf course?
identified himself as didn't he say, I own a golf course?
I don't think so, if he said that.
I'd be surprised.
it's-
Yeah, he doesn't own one.
He
He
doesn't
doesn't
own
own a
one.
golf course.
Yeah.
At least not-
It's immaterial, I think he was
But he
just-
does play.
Yes.
I was approached by someone who has a relationship with the Falmouth Golf Course Country Club at the meeting in Hyannis last week, who said he wasn't aware of this or what it was about or whatever. Whoever this person was had some relationship to it, but he was asking. And I think I directed him to you. You were standing there, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
sent him an email.
Okay,
directing
okay.
him to the town meeting warrant that was published in last Friday's Enterprise to read the bylaw,
Okay.
as published in the warrant, because I thought that was the best place to look at it.
Fair enough.
And then so that was precinct 1 and 2. Precinct 4 also had some interesting questions about, let's see, let me get them in order. The question of the numbering versus the letters and those clerical issues, and also a question about which resource areas were being included. And I think we have a pathway for addressing resource areas and how we're gonna more accurately define those resource areas that we meant. But that question came up, so when we talk about making a report to town meeting on this bylaw, we should be careful to try to get it straight for people. I think that would be the sort of seminal, the take home from the meetings was, let's be really clear when we do our presentation,
Okay.
what we mean.
I-
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, the question came up about the wetlands bylaw and this bylaw, and the difference in terms of those areas or that area. And to me, it's not that clear where the difference is. You'd said something, Virginia, about it in an email.
Yeah.
And I'm not, to me, it's not so clear. It seems that the 100-foot setback from waters, having lived on a pond and had to go through the process with the Conservation Commission, seemed very, so it was, it's under the wetland bylaw about what, you couldn't touch a stick really inside that area from what it said. So I don't know how it differs.
My impression is what this bylaw says is you can't apply fertilizer within the 100 feet of that wetland.
Right, but the wetland bylaw implies that as well, I think. You can't do anything in there, hardly.
So we're not in conflict with the wetlands bylaw.
No, we're consistent with it, but it's very similar to, it's not that different, really. What it's saying is what the wetland bylaw would, for that particular part of it, would
So it's kind of like the speed limit in kilometers per hour as well as miles per hour.
Well, no, they're both miles per hour, but you can do it in both.
Well, if it's true what you say, then no one should have any objection to it.
They should, no, because if they do, then it's like, it's covered, basically, already, and they should be in compliance with the wetlands bylaw, unless they've got a variance.
Except that the Conservation Commission does not prohibit fertilizer within the resource area, within the buffer area. It's true what you said about you can't move a stick. You're not supposed to remove a tree, take a bush out, or anything like that. But there are places all over town, and there are clearly places all around Little Pond where you're within 100 feet of the water, and it's lawn. They've just mowed everything down.
Well, the thing is, a lot of the houses, a lot of the properties are within 100
Well,
feet.
that's right, even the houses.
whole property.
Yes, that's right.
No, we can't address
That's
that.
right. But to get back to the essence of it, the Conservation Commission does not have a restriction on fertilizer. They certainly, it's sort of like.
Jurisdictional.
They have the jurisdiction, and if you ask them, can I do this, or you come in to ask for some other project, then they could take that opportunity to say, no, you can't put any fertilizer on there. But for the town as a whole, in terms of a policy as a whole, it has never been stated no fertilizer within 100 feet of the edge of the water. And that's sort of the progress that we're trying to make.
But then as far as the golf courses go, essentially you're saying they're looking the other way because obviously they must cut the grass there. If
Yes.
they're not cutting the grass, why would they fertilize?
Exactly. Golf courses are going to keep popping up until we finally digest whether they're going to be an exemption or whether they control themselves, or I don't know how it's going to sift out.
I sort of try to step back from the nuances of whether this is an overlap with the Concom or whatever else. Because over time, we as a community will need to present to whomever what we're doing to address nitrogen. And it's much easier and clearer at any moment in time when there's grant funding and people say, what have you done about this or what have you done about that? They have very clear, concise regulations that we can say, we have a regulation that limits the application of fertilizer 100 feet from this. I mean, it's just, even though it's an overlap, and we are all wrestling with it right here and how it's going to play out in town meeting, in terms of going forward in front of the DEP or anybody else about what we're doing, the progress we're making, say, there's a specific bylaw. DEP may not want to dig into all the nuances of where it overlaps with everything else in town, but it's a lot easier to apply for grants or loans or everything else and say, we've checklist, there's a bylaw.
Right.
Checklist, there's a bylaw. Checklist, we've done this. Checklist, we've done that. Okay?
Right.
So I think ultimately this is, part of this is a feel-good bylaw, as we had a long conversation about how really tough it is. But it does lay out there the expectation for good behavior of people that live in the watersheds to raise the value of the watersheds and the ecological health of the watersheds. Please don't put fertilizer on your lawn. And if you do, you're probably breaking a bylaw. So please stop doing it. Be smarter about your fertilizer application.
Exactly. Okay, at the last meeting, I volunteered to prepare a letter for town meeting members. I have a draft of it, which I will pass around. Be happy to take comment, but I guess it'll be by email. over between now and when we actually send something out. The question of sending something out, it occurs to me that I don't believe we can use public funds for this, because we are advocating a position on a question at the town meeting.
Advocating or educating?
Well, read the letter and see what you think.
If you told me you were educating.
Well, we're asking people to vote for something.
Okay.
Could I make a comment in terms of sending
Sure.
it out? I think the town clerk has the email
We
addresses.
have that.
Oh, okay.
have
So
You want to send it by email?
I'm suggesting, is there any,
Both.
I see no problem with doing
Both.
that.
Both. I would
Yeah.
think both. I mean, there are people who don't have email.
Well, that's true. It's maybe
But
I think the
70.
question is, legally, we're supposed to use public funds to petition town meeting in favor or against a particular
Right.
meeting,
a particular article.
a particular article.
I mean, I don't think this is a huge issue. It's like $125, and I think Faces or somebody would be happy to,
Or some contribution.
or somebody, we could come up with $125 from other sources, but as
Okay.
opposed to using public funds. I just didn't want us to be using public funds inappropriately.
Is
I
this,
see your point.
is this something that could be used at, I'm going to be at
Precinct.
Precinct 3 meeting
Sure.
on the 7th. Is this something that can be taken to that meeting and
Absolutely.
distributed there?
Well, yeah.
Did,
more the
I'd like
merrier.
to also ask Sia and Jerry, did you actually have a chance to present something, or were people just asking you questions, or how does that work when you get to a public meeting? What should I prepare myself for doing?
It depends on the precinct. From my experience last year, going to the same precinct, I knew that at precinct 1 and 2, you just answer questions. Doug Jones, who's the captain, the precinct captain for 1, he makes the presentation and you're there to answer questions. But at precinct 4, they ask you to make a presentation. So you may want to ask the captain if they will be expecting you to make a brief presentation,
Right.
like 5 or 6
Sure,
sentences.
okay. Who was the captain of Precinct 3?
It was in the newspaper
Okay.
on
Oh, it's in the,
It's also online.
Friday.
It's online.
Right.
yeah,
Right, I saw
Yeah.
that, okay.
you can find
Friday
it,
or
yeah.
Tuesday.
And let me just brief you a little bit
Mhm.
after the meeting on
Sure.
how to explain the letters are supposed to be numbers. Just the clerical. That's a good thing to tell people, just explain
Yeah.
the clerical.
Okay.
May I make a suggestion? The selectmen recommended our bylaw with the 2 changes that we voted, but the original article had already been advertised, so they couldn't just change the words. So they recommended the article with those words in, and now we're making a second change, which is really just technical and scriveners and all that sort of stuff. It would be a lot simpler for town meeting if we made, take a colored sheet, yellow something,
Green.
green, and put all of these changes in it, so that the article that you want town meeting to vote is as right in front of you.
Right. My intention on this was to send them a letter with the final version of the motion printed on the back.
On the back, that's
Right.
great, but you just definitely have more to hand out at town meeting.
Well, it would still be one sheet.
Yes, right.
But
Oh,
the mo-
that's good.
the motion already has some changes because the
Yes.
letters have been changed to numbers and all of that.
Exactly, it'll be very confusing.
And there may be some other technical pieces that the Concom and Frank Duffy are still
Chewing
That
over.
would be the best one to
Clarifying.
distribute,
so.
even if you have to do it that day as people walk in.
Right,
Well, we do that as well as mail it to them.
Yeah.
But, so certainly by 4 or 5 days before town meeting, it ought to be squared away. And it could be printed and distributed by mail and by email and handed out at that point. So,
right.
so
Excuse me.
yes,
If you haven't been at any of these, the more general you can be and not necessarily invite debate,
Yeah.
the easier, the more positive, just learning from experience. Because as you try to sell it, the people who get it are gonna,
Yeah, I can see that.
right.
I can.
Can you have something like this in the enterprise?
Yes, yeah, well, I can give it to them and see if they run it as a column or however, yeah.
Well, other than it doesn't have a date, I think the letter looks good.
Right.
My first name is PH.
That's a good one. I have everybody's name on this. Do we?
My
Without-
middle initial is a D.
Oh God,
When is it?
you're not. Are you?
W-I-N.
Monroe is correct.
Monroe's correct, but Wen has two N's.
It's-
There's only
it should
one
be
N.
only one.
It is
One N
It
and
is
Win.
one.
Because
Okay.
I always say one
Right.
N, and I'm like, oh, I've been doing it
Yeah,
wrong.
it's one N. I just don't bother to correct everybody. It's not worth it.
Have I spelled you wrong again?
How many ways can you spell Win Monroe?
Why don't you just change it to the
You'd
way
be
we
surprised.
spell it?
You'd be surprised.
L. Smith.
All right. Well, it looks like people are putting their comments in paper and handing it back, which is fine
Okay.
too. Well,
Good job, Eric.
Yes,
Well-
thank you, Eric.
we'll see.
So, do you want a motion to send a letter to town meeting members?
Okay, that's fair.
In the enterprise.
Is that
And the
okay?
enterprise and,
And the enterprise, right? Try to send it by email.
Yep.
Um,
okay.
So moved.
I hear a motion. Do we have a second? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Send it.
Are we all on it?
Are you opposed?
What? Are we all here?
Are we all on it?
Yeah, I think we're all on it.
Right, that's terrific. Unanimous. Report of members and staff. We did the RFPs. I think we've covered, well, the engineering one was in the past. We've covered the next two, the shellfish. We've covered the PRBs.
That will be announced Monday night.
Right.
It's
Are they
Monday
gonna-
night.
Is it going up Monday night? Good,
Yes, the recommendation went forward in detail,
good,
and it's on the agenda, I forget what time.
okay. Is there anything else on any RFPs that we ought to hear about?
The Oyster Pond one was in the Central Register on Wednesday.
There you
I've
go.
got something like 8 or 9 requests already,
Ah,
and it's like 4 or 5 days.
Hmm.
And the number of firms I would think have not come in yet, and there were some interesting firms that applied. I will distribute it after it goes public, but I ask that you don't give it to people for the simple reason, if they get it, or if we post it, and then there's a change or an amendment, they say, well, gee whiz, there was a flaw in it, flaw in the process.
Right.
So that's why I try to guard this, but if you see any errors, typos, things like that are significant, we can always correct them. Hopefully there aren't too many. I just found a bunch this afternoon when I was trying to publish it, make copies, and I said, oh my God, there's, we've extended Sia's contract. It's been signed
great.
for an additional $8,000. That gives us $2,000 for
Party.
Printing.
Printing.
I know DOT.
I think that's about it, I think.
Okay.
The nitrogen ball.
Let's hope our national
And-
TV
oh, yeah,
audience
this-
has gone for a beer.
And we'll work on the stormwater one next. It's surprisingly simple, so hopefully it won't take too long to get out.
Right.
Wonderful.
Steve has graciously volunteered to,
I indicated that I would, if there was a need to work with Peter a little bit and you would just make sure what we're covering.
On which one?
the stormwater.
Peter? Oh, McConerty.
Yeah.
He's actually hasn't had a lot of involvement, because at one time, there was a question, I didn't necessarily, it was like, this is not necessarily a compliance audit for the DPW and stormwater regs. But I do have what I'm gonna include, all the information that Peter McConerty gave as to the exact locations of the outfalls, as we know. But feel free to, and I'm assuming you're not recused from any other engineering stuff. At one time, you were recusing yourself.
I am recusing myself from engineering items, but maybe I misinformed as to what the stormwater will actually go as. I thought it was more of a permitting evaluation sort of exercise.
I think it's an engineering evaluation
Well,
of
then I
potential
recuse myself.
stormwater reduction availability from standard best management practices to include nitrogen, include vegetative swales and other things. I would think it's clearly more of the engineering
Yeah,
than writing a bylaw or a sewage, stormwater regulation. In fact, we voted that
Okay.
out, I thought.
All right, done.
so we'll have to pick up stormwater in
Right.
January, and it can't be Steve.
Right.
Rafferty.
It might go out before, but I've
Well,
never been that fast.
Yeah, it probably, we ought to have another look at it before it starts flying out the door.
Right.
To say the least. Report of members and staff. Any other, Matt has a report, I know, from the town moderator.
Right, and from town council on that amendment that I referred to you, we talked about last meeting on Article 39. Town council has found no problem with it. He asked me to get in touch with the town moderator to make sure that it was within the scope,
Yeah,
and it is within the scope.
great.
So we can file it, or we can put it out on the floor with a positive motion. Okay, we don't have to
Sure.
file an amendment. We can put it out on the floor
Absolutely.
as a positive motion. So
Sure.
if everybody's agreed to that, I'll speak to that on
Fine.
town meeting.
Any objection to that? I think we all voted to support it last time, and it hasn't changed.
Okay, and I'll add that Hilda is already putting together an explanation for town meeting.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Okay, any other reports from members or staff on anything else?
I have two small items anyway. I attended the November 8th meeting with the town. I will be attending a November 8th meeting of the town managers who have been invited by Julian Suso to discuss, to give them a very brief presentation on the status of the eco-toilets in Falmouth and what they're doing. And my thought was to get together with SIA and get material that is available to them, could be available to them on the program, what has been done already, and just be sure that I'm up on what SIA's been doing. And present just a straightforward, this is what we're doing, these are the materials we're using. We'd like to know if there's some interest in other towns being interested in doing this kind of thing. That's.
So they're coming here, or are you going to the other towns?
I'm going to the meeting of the town managers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On November 8th, they're meeting at the in Mashpee Commons at the Bistro Restaurant.
Oh.
I don't know whether I don't think my meal is going to be paid for, but anyway, whatever.
Good. Well, that's
So
good.
You're gonna get a free meal?
I don't think so.
I think you do.
You do?
Oh, well.
Whatever.
Yeah, can we come with you?
Anybody who wants can come. I'd love to have people come. But I just arranged this. I asked Julian a couple of months ago whether it's possible. He came back and said last week.
That's great.
I've arranged for you to go on the 8th.
That's great.
So that's one. The second one, I went to that. Does anybody want to hear anything about the conference on the 22nd and 23rd that a couple of others were at?
Yeah, we should.
Yes, I was hoping you would bring it up. I was particularly interested in what's the next step, or was there a major accomplishment, or something new? Those are my questions.
I would not like to speak authoritatively about that today as to what they're going to do, because I think they were talking about that. There was a meeting the next day. Perhaps, were you there at that meeting?
I was there for part of it, yeah. But I didn't get to the part where that part was discussed.
We're actually going to do something.
Yeah. Well, it's part of an educational thing. There's huge. It was quite an impressive showing. There were about 200 people, and there were 5 people from the EPA,
Right.
and 2 from DEP, and then we had various scientists, environmentalists, vendors. There was a poster session and a trade show. And so it was very, very well attended, and all kinds of technologies were there. And I think that people began to hear a lot about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think there were a number of presentations. I actually gave 3. But one was a poster session, and then there was a plenary, and then there was a breakout group. But it was broken into plenary sessions and breakout groups. And there was a lot of time for discussion. That was really a strong point of it. And then out of those breakout groups and things, recommendations were put together from the skill of people there, which was quite broad and deep. We had, people from the county, the state as well there, and the towns. And so there was quite a bit of discussions. A lot of people seemed not to even be aware there were alternatives to the traditional approach. And so a lot of that came out. And I think that was quite, it was a major educational forum, I think, in many ways, considering the range. And the interesting thing, too, was that the EPA basically wrapped itself around this sort of, very careful comparative analysis of alternatives and working toward resource conservation as well as water conservation, and aspects over energy were brought up, and some discussion of issues related to climate change and those elements as well. So it had for a lot of experience from other parts of the country and other parts of the world, from Australia, from Canada, and so it was really quite a very rich session. And these are very serious engineers who spoke. Scott Horsley spoke about cluster systems that he had designed in Sandwich, and it did the range of different things and how to look at the situation. But the main thing is that it is the Cape and a good part of the country is faced with a lot of unfunded mandates. And how do we deal with that? And where does the interest lie, really, with the communities? Because we have to pay for it, basically. It comes out of our pockets. And so there was always the wishful thinking about federal and state grants and this kind of thing. But what it comes down to, that we've been very, very, very aware of, is that it takes a lot of community will. I think that another element that was brought up was transparency and education and making it very clear to the communities of what channels are being followed and what options are being looked at to engender or to trust. And I think that really came out as one very important element in the whole thing. As far as getting people to say, look, they've done the work, they've done the homework, it's really there, and it follows, and it's comprehensive, not just in terms of the options, but also comprehensive in terms of the explanation, which often isn't the case. And sometimes it takes more than just the bit. But the main thing is that on the Cape we've had, I don't know how many votes now, at least 2 significant votes. The one in Yarmouth most recently to vote down the plan or the funding of their program there. And so this is something to be very leery of, and that I think that the Cape Cod Commission is aware of this, and I could tell from. And another thing that Paul Niedzwiecki said, he said it here in Falmouth when he came to do his town meeting, which was that basically the traditional systems have a real issue over affordability, and you just have to go over the bridge, as he says, to look at communities there and what they're dealing with as far as keeping their systems going and the cost of that. So this is the challenge that we have, and Falmouth, we're doing, everyone kind of is amazed actually at how far we've gotten, and are looking, how far we go and how this manifests itself, we'll have to see with regard to the regulatory environment and that kind of thing. But in my talk, one of my talks, I did emphasize the aspect that I sent the memo around to everyone about the notion that what are the town's interests and how do we best deal with them? Whether estuary management is the primary track, and that the upstream aspects are secondary but important, but also have to go in parallel. That these are all ways of looking at it, because speed is critical. And speed is what we need to get at this. If we look at long time, decades of getting at it, it may take that. But if we can shorten that, then the estuaries will have a quicker chance to recover. But I think it was really it was quite a wonderful session. I was amazed at how many people came and the diverse thoughts and the experience that could be brought in, that's been brought in, and people from who have been working at this in various organizations and things for a long time. So it was
Positive
good.
outcome
Thank you.
falls on is that based on SIA's effort, there's a local hardware store that's seriously considering offering a particular line of compost toilets.
That's right.
Right.
Are we allowed to name them?
Well, he sent me, Ace Hardware said, and he was thinking about Sunmar, which I hadn't heard of them, but SIA tells me they're one of the big three, even though we've only heard about two,
Right.
or big four.
Big four.
Big one.
One of the
There
big
are
four.
4 systems that have product approval from the state, and they're one of them, and I had made several overtures because I had been contacting them before, and I hadn't been able to get a hold of them, but they were at the conference and personal touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrific.
So go in and encourage Len
Yep.
to
Yeah.
fully explore it.
Ace Hardware better known as Eastman's to
Yes.
many people, but
Yeah.
that's terrific.
And because that's their, they didn't respond because their business model is to sell their system through hardware stores. That's
Terrific.
that's the way they do it.
I see.
Good.
And I gave them the name of all the hardware stores
Yes.
in Falmouth.
Yes, including,
And
There's
the
a-
plumbing supplies.
there's a new plumbing store coming to Worcester Court.
FW Webb.
FW Webb. It has an office in Hyannis, right. But this is going to be 18,000 square feet.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
going to be really large. And I was also thinking it's a brand new store. It would be wonderful if they would use composting toilets.
Yes.
We'll contact them.
Okay, I
That way,
can,
unless the
Right.
committee,
And
somebody else
there are
wants to.
2 other plumbing supply stores.
yes.
Well, one more thing I did want to say about the conference, though, is just that it was sponsored by the Water Alliance, which is again Valerie's group, and Becky Smith, and the EPA, and the Cape Cod Commission. So it was a very, pretty broad in a way in terms of the sponsors, and so it was
Great.
great.
Okay.
1 or 2 small things,
Yeah.
just
Okay.
to add to that. I learned a very important, C and I learned a very important thing from one of the presenters, Cynthia Mitchell from Australia, who explained to us the problems real problems they had undergone in their own experiments with urine diverting toilets, and how these were overcome. So very, very important information for us, plumbing problems that we can actually go to her and say, this is how you have to install it in order to make it work.
Good.
So that was just one little thing that came out of it. And I listened with extreme interest to several of the presentations on financing. Bob Seelig gave a brilliant presentation of the way in which financing was supposed to go for the big project. I'm going to get a copy of that and distribute it. The way he's looked at it for the whole Cape. He's worked at this for years, obviously. He's worked out the figures. How the project, if it were to be large-scale sewering, this is what the financing would have to look like. And he said he was one of the ones who said that we had to have 50% payment by the Cape, 25% had to come from the town, 25% had to come from this county, from the state, 25% from the federal government. That was the way he said it was envisioned, that we wouldn't be able to finance it otherwise.
A lot of wishful thinking in that
A
statement.
lot of wishful thinking in that. And then there were quite a number of people, Patrick Lucy and some other people, were talking about how projects had to be set up and how projects had to be worked through so that private financing could be gained. In other words, that private people would be willing to put some money up to do things. And I think that we need to pay attention to that. We need to talk about that. We need to figure out how that can be done.
Yep.
Patrick Lucy has written to me since he would like to, he sent me an enormous number of information about private financing of public projects and so forth. I'll go through that. I'll see what he wants to talk with us about it. He'd like to.
I think after the beginning of the year, I think that'll be on our plate
It
because
will,
it's in our to-do list, and obviously there's stuff that's more immediate, but it's got to happen in that
That's right.
time frame.
The other thing, I heard a fantastic discussion by Kurt Felix. I'd like to get your response to that on the Wellfleet oyster reefs he wants to create. Completely different picture of how you use oysters. They want to use oysters as ways of encouraging bioactivity to occur, encouraging things to happen, not so much to take nitrogen out as to encourage the systems to recover. And that was very interesting to me, the way they were doing it. He was talking about recreating the oyster reefs which used to exist in Pleasant Bay. And they've actually done some of that. And they're showing all sorts of good things about it. I'd like to get your ideas on that eventually.
Yeah. It's an interesting talk. It's got some regulatory issues that he has to deal with, but but anyway, it's another way of looking at things. But the one thing I did show in one of my talks, a little film clip, I have of oysters spawning in the aquaculture bags. So I said that benefit to the environment of reseeding can also come from aquaculture as it could from a reef. So it is.
Any other reports of members and staff? Virginia?
This involves SIA. As you all probably know, today was the day that the water bills went into the mail. And so they all have the telephone number, which is now alive and operative. I think we should have a little discussion just about protocol. SIA is going to be checking the messages twice a day. But the question is then, and maintaining a log of what those, but then the question is, how do the questions get fielded? So I think we should at least have a common understanding with her here. If it's an eco-toilet question, which is what we certainly hope it will be, when, what's your feeling as to how she should handle that?
I would like to offer my time to answer some of those questions as they come in. I think that would be the most useful thing I could do.
Great.
And all we need to do is, we correspond with one another. What kinds of answers should I be giving these questions? What kind of a...
Well, you're pretty up to speed on everything.
I
wouldn't worry too much about giving wrong answers.
Not wrong answers, just sometimes too much information.
Well, yeah, true.
Okay.
What should we be saying?
So that means on a daily basis, you'll get names, or either you'll forward the log or you'll forward the names and the phone numbers, and then you will need to follow up, and she needs, in this log, she needs to track what the end result is. So
I'm experienced at making a series of phone calls. I know how to do that.
Good.
I've done that in the past. So if you send me I hope it's not 50 names a day. That would take all day.
Well, and you may want to decide that she does some of this.
Or somebody else does something,
Well, it's going to be either one of you.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because it can't be Matt.
Right.
Right.
Too busy.
Just a question and a thought. My question is, does the committee agree that twice a day is adequate? I was gonna
It's probably more than you need to be.
I think so.
Okay, just want to
Yes.
make sure.
You don't, how many, what's the limit before?
100.
Oh,
100
God.
calls.
So,
So
Can the outgoing message hint at that? I mean,
it says a brief message.
but that the call will be answered within 24 hours or something. So the
so
type
she
A
answers the
personality
phone, not
don't
get back to them.
keep calling you again and again.
I'd say let's see how it goes.
Yeah, see how it goes.
Let's see how it
Yeah,
I
goes.
think it's a lot easier.
Right.
You may get 2, you may get 200, you have no idea. Let's wait and see.
Okay.
So
If they're fertilizer questions, I think SIA's perfectly positioned to answer those questions. I don't think it needs to be referred to anybody else.
Right.
And we will need to see this log or have some sort of report on it at our meetings at a regular time. So then the question is, if it's aquaculture, if it has to do with inlets, how shall she handle those calls? Shall they be sent to the appropriate members? So aquaculture go to Ron?
Sounds fair.
Is that okay? Is that okay with you?
Huh? No, that's fine, yeah. As long as
Okay.
I'm happy to field
Okay.
those
Okay,
best I can.
right.
So I'll send them to you. Should I CC anybody or should I just send it?
Do you want to see the chair?
I got enough CCs.
Okay. I'll see if I find something, I'll come back.
I mean, we get together every 2 weeks. And,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
There's these things having to do with immediacy and urgency.
Right.
Right.
I have a hard time believing that anybody that calls our phone number is actually in an urgent situation, otherwise they'd call 911.
Right.
But they may have some immediacy for wanting to get more information, and as long as they understand in the first call back that,
Right.
you know, we only meet every 2 weeks, and we understand you've got this interest, and we'll bring it up at the next meeting, I think that all keeps
Yeah.
moving it along.
Okay, great.
Sia, how do you keep phone logs best? What kind of form would I get phone?
Okay, why don't you have that
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah, okay,
later?
Good.
Okay.
But I just thought,
So there's
Minutes.
there's PRBs and.
We talked about PRBs.
In terms of phone
Who gets
calls.
paid?
Not in terms of phone calls, haven't been. I
It's true.
think
Why
it's-
would there be phone calls on these other stuff? There's nothing in the water bill to, and we're certainly not promising answers over that phone line
No.
on anything but fertilizer and eco-flow.
That's true so far. That's the only thing.
Right, you will get other questions. I mean, just because the phone number's there.
But I mean, but the person can reasonably be put off more.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Play it by ear.
All right, let's see how we go. It's just we
and
should
see what we
know.
look like at the next
Excellent.
meeting.
Yeah. And our next meeting is
Okay,
next
well, that
Monday.
was the next concern. The next meeting is next Monday. That's the workshop with a limited agenda. We then have the 15th and the 29th. The 15th was originally going to be set aside entirely for the MEP reports on all the new reports, the estuaries that haven't previously been reported on. I'm gleaning from my emails that they would not be available to do it that evening.
That's correct, and they think because of if they're gonna do all the
Yeah.
estuaries, it may be best for like an early morning or something like that, where you could have spend several hours.
Well, we can have several hours in the evening, but I don't think we can ask this committee to meet in the morning.
I just
e-
implied what they
every
said,
week.
I don't.
Yeah, no, I saw what they were saying.
Can't you start?
Well, wait,
Yeah.
I know, but the 15th still, if judging by the town meeting last time.
Right. Well, that could be another issue.
it
Are we
could
all
be
going
a-
to be dead
It could be,
from lack
well, it
of
could be a
sleep?
risk if it goes, carries over. You think
Well, that would be a 3-night town meeting.
Yeah.
We haven't had one of those in a very long
We
time.
had a 4-night one last time.
Yeah, but that
That's-
involved budgets and everything else. This
Yeah.
is the non-budget town meeting.
The MEP reports are not necessarily something of real urgency, I don't think, to a lot of people. It's
No,
a
it can wait.
process thing. We owe them at least 50% of the not 50, whatever the contract price is,
Right.
because they produced a draft.
Right.
So, I mean, if this spills over into next year, fine, or if
Okay,
we can
fine.
get another date,
Which
that's my
report?
recommendation.
Well, there's 6 of them, right? 6 MEP reports that they've
I thought there
produced.
All of them, oh.
All except for the one that
Not South Pond and not,
That's-
up in Vaughan, the one we
no,
chose, that again.
Megantic.
Singantacket, no. Megantic, right.
Fatigue.
But this is Fiddler's Cove, this is Quistit, this is Wild Harbor, this
Rands.
is Rands.
The other piece of Wacoit.
Piece of
In
the
the
other
harbor.
half of
Oh, okay,
Wacoit.
I
In the
see.
harbor. Well,
In the
harbor
harbor.
Coit.
Okay, I see.
Harbor.
They
Okay.
combined
The new ones
Coit,
then.
so it's
The new
one
ones.
The new
big
ones.
one
Oh,
now.
Okay.
And that was the one,
It's a lot
even
of
if he
reading.
talks here,
Yeah.
I think we're probably obligated to try to have
That's what I
something
wanted
with
to put a
Mashpee.
whole
maybe
meeting
in
about.
Absolutely,
that.
absolutely. That should be a
Yeah.
separate meeting.
Okay.
We should coordinate it with Mashpee.
All right.
I'm sorry,
Well,
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, let's not do this on the 15th because they won't come.
That's
So the question of whether we should be scheduling a meeting at all on the 15th is the next one.
after 2 nights of town
We
meeting.
will have just had 2 months of town meeting. We will have just had the workshop on the 5th. I'd just as soon wait till the last Thursday in November and
Is there a question about the availability of this room on the last Thursday? And if so,
No.
so we're okay?
we've been getting it every other Thursday.
There's no one scheduled for the 5th Thursday. We just
We could
happen,
get- So that's up.
so as long as we,
Yeah.
have a key and sort of let people know
Right.
that the room's
But
available.
then there'll be a meeting very shortly after that for the first Thursday.
That's right. Well, which is the regular
So
time.
there's 2 meetings close together, that's fine,
Yeah.
just mapping it out.
Sure.
Okay.
Does that work for people?
So we'll cancel the meeting.
So no,
Cancel the 15th,
I'd like to,
come back on the 29th, and then you're into December after that.
I just want to ask one question before we
Sure.
put that in concrete. The RFP, RFQ, or whatever it is going to be for EcoToilets Plus.
let me talk to you about that afterwards. We're gonna-
When is that going to be
We
ready?
can't talk about that right now.
Okay.
But
I know we can't talk about it, I just wanted
Well, the question.
what are you talking about?
to, okay, good.
The only question I have about the 15th is whether there is something coming that we would need to vote on at that point.
I don't, What do you mean, something from?
Like another RFP or something like this that we need to clear? Do we
No, all
need
the
to do-
RFPs have been approved. It's tweaking it with the committee to make sure that we're still well within, you know, this, most of them, people did a good job, but we had to merge it into the standard format that Ray had proposed. And I don't think there's been any drastic changes. The grammarians and English majors will yell at me, but they're going out the door. There's nothing the committee has to vote on,
Okay.
unless a
Yeah,
particular
yeah.
chairman objects to
Right,
something.
we're okay on the RFPs. I think we could, I mean, if something came up, we could always have the meeting, but I think right
Okay.
now, I don't see anything on the horizon that requires us to.
And we can reasonably anticipate that we'll have something from MEPA before the 29th that we can absorb.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely, but the
To-
deadline
that
is,
we can absorb and then be
The
prepared
the
to.
certificate will be on the 15th.
I just point out that getting the certificate on the 15th doesn't give us any chance to read it, absorb it, and prepare for meeting. So the 29th is a good
Exactly,
time,
yes.
because we get a chance
Makes more
to
sense.
receive it, read it,
Read it, think
get our
about it.
way through it, and then come in prepared. and
Right.
Maybe staff will have
Right.
worked their way through it as well. So.
There'll be, remember, we're getting into, we're gonna start getting reports from the engineering report from the inlet, and some of these reports are gonna be like quick feedback, turnaround times. So,
Right.
you know, September, November and December are gonna be
Right.
very busy. We
That's
might
right.
need extra meetings.
Well, there's nothing going on during that time period anyways, right?
Right, well, Thanksgiving, Christmas,
We're past the Festival of Lights, and, you know, we're into
right,
Ramadan.
yeah.
The
No
steamroller
Christmas
stuff.
vacation here, we got that?
So November 29th and December 6th.
Yes.
We've got the commission report in, that's probably a prelude to what the
Right.
DEP report's gonna say.
Right.
Has the commission report been finalized?
Yeah, I got it.
It didn't change by a comma from the previous version because they, their second session of their hearing wasn't held and isn't gonna be held. So they just sent the comments in as the staff had prepared them.
I have them, I'll send them another.
Should send them around
copy.
Yeah,
officially.
can
say
send
this is
them
the
around,
final.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought, because they asked for written comments, and then there was the session in town here,
That's true.
and,
But-
but they didn't change a thing, as far as you know.
I didn't read it that closely, I think they were pretty broad, I thought at some time they may have made some corrections. We sent them some additional information on Site 7 that they wanted, and that's it. I mean, significance is, you might think a minor word is significant, might say, this is pretty much what we're expecting.
Right, well, you can send it around, you can take a
Yeah,
look.
yeah, okay.
Anything else before we get to the minutes of the October 18th meeting?
There was well, in terms of correspondence, we did get this comments from the Buzzards Bay Coalition
Yep.
on the draft
Yep.
plan and the draft environmental impact.
And I think we're gonna take that up on the 29th because everybody
Okay, I'm
else's
just saying.
comments will also be
Right,
involved
and I'm
in
just
that
saying that,
conversation.
just so that,
Yeah.
is this been posted, do we know?
Well, it's not our job to post their comments. I mean, there are gonna be lots of comments from lots of
I see.
sources going to the state. And
Hmm.
And what we are interested in is what the state comes back with by way of what their comment is to us.
And eventually, we're gonna
Okay.
review all those things.
Right.
Not to get into debate, but I think that particular letter does not meet the technical expertise that the BBC has had in the past. There were some errors, but we don't have to get into that now.
The 29th will be a fine
29th,
time to bring that up.
Oh, okay.
Minutes? Everybody's seen the minutes of October 18th? I understand there was a mistake.
See?
Horrible mistake. It was the worst mistake we've ever seen.
All right, but would you, aside from, would somebody identify the mistake so we
It
can
was
amend?
just, well, I had suggested a joint meeting with the Board of
Got it.
Health, and the minutes were reflected it was a joint meeting with the Planning Board,
Okay,
so.
so that
So
sounds,
that's already been corrected in here.
that has been corrected, all right.
Well, I got that correction.
I
Just
handed-
this
I
evening,
handed
so-
it.
Okay, are there any other corrections to be offered up before we,
Yes,
yes?
two, which I've discussed with Carol, but needed to be approved by the, in the section about Matt's amendment, or article, there was a typo. It has to be switched to volunteer, to participate from volunteer.
And I got it.
Okay.
It's written the other way. That's not really
Okay,
supposed
that's,
Keep passing.
oh,
Keep it
great.
going.
to. Don't think anyone would complain
So
about that.
it'll stop with the name on it.
okay, that sounds like,
It's you.
Carol, have you got that
That's
one?
I got
Okay,
And the other one, when I said that Matt had finessed the details, which I did say, I meant, and I think the committee understood, that the details had been purposely left out and thus postponed to a later discussion, during which any of the details, if not properly addressed, could potentially block the whole idea. But
they've got three.
in particular, there's wording in the printed draft that Matt distributed saying
Oh, that's
acting
one I have.
through the
I have
Water
that one.
Quality
I
Committee to
have that one.
pursue, which clearly specifies that the Water Quality Management Committee will be involved, not just the town council and town manager as in the minutes. And Carol had an excellent way of fixing that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I can read what I would write in lieu of that, or?
Well, has it been fixed to your satisfaction?
I like what Carol wrote, yes.
Okay, does anybody want to hear it, or want to trust that Steve and Carol have worked it out?
Carol, we haven't had a chance to speak yet tonight. What did you write?
This is what I wrote. And we're looking at page 4, the first paragraph on page 4. So I have substituted a sentence about a third of the way down. Steve Layton said, in essence, that the revised language of the article effectively postponed discussion of the details, which the Water Quality Management Committee would be involved in along with the town council and town manager when the time is appropriate. That's pretty much the suggested change.
Sound good to you?
You're here.
Yes,
All right.
right.
Okay, with those two amendments, a motion to adopt the minutes would be appreciated.
So moved.
Second,
Yeah.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes adopted. Motion to adjourn.
Those are yours.
Second.
Matt,
These
take
to
yours.
Matt.
All in favor of adjournment?
And
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
These go to Layton.
We're done.
Steve.
Your name's on them.